Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on the bridge of Sentinel Prime. The space station floated quietly in the dark between the stars. It was far from Earth, watching the empty space where human territory ended and the unknown galaxy. Jake had been running this station for 3 years now. Most days were boring. His crew of 40 people watched screens, listened to radio signals, and wrote reports that nobody back on Earth seemed to care about. The job was simple: watch. For anything strange coming toward human space, Lisa Carter worked at the communications desk. She was 28 years old and had been listening to space radio for most of her adult life. She knew the difference between star noise, engine sounds, and real messages. Today felt different, though. Her equipment was picking up something. "New, Captain Morrison," Lisa called out. Her voice was tight with worry. "I'm getting a signal from the Vega system. It's not one of ours." Jake stood up and walked over to her station. The Vega system was 12 light years away. No human ships were supposed to be out there. "What kind of signal?" "It's encrypted. But I think it's a distress call. The pattern keeps repeating. Someone is asking for help." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Sir, I think I can break the code." "Give me a few minutes." Jake nodded. He felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In all his years out here, they had never received an alien message. Humanity had been traveling between the stars for 200 years, but they had always been alone. They had found dead worlds and empty space, but never another living race. "Get me Admiral Sullivan on the quantum communicator," Jake ordered. Priority 1. His second officer, Commander Pete Johnson, looked up from his own station. "Sir, are you sure we should bother the Admiral?" "It might be nothing." "Pete, if aliens are calling for help in our backyard, the Admiral needs to know." Jake walked back to his chair. His hands were shaking slightly. Everything was about to change. Lisa worked for 20 minutes before she cracked the alien code. When the translation came through, her face went white. "Captain, you need to hear this." Jake put on his headset. The voice that came through was not human, but the words were clear. The alien spoke slowly, like someone who was very tired and very scared. "This is Admiral Vel-Terran of the Zilithian Republic. We are sending this message to all spacefaring races. Our people are dying. The Corvan Empire has attacked our worlds. They have already destroyed 12 of our colonies. 3 billion of our people are dead." Jake felt his blood turn cold. 3 billion dead. That was half the population of Earth. Alien voice continued. "The Corvan fleet is now moving toward our homeworld. We have 20 million people who cannot escape. Our military cannot stop them. We are asking any race that receives this message to help us. We will give you everything we have. Our technology, our wealth, our knowledge. Please, if there is anyone out there who cares about life, help us." The message ended and started over. Again, Jake listened to it 3 more times. Each time, the alien's voice sounded more desperate. Admiral Kate Sullivan's face appeared on Jake's main screen 30 minutes later. She was a stern woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the Asteroid Wars. She was not someone who scared easily. "Captain Morrison, I got your message. Play me this alien signal." Jake played the recording. He watched the Admiral's face as she listened. Her expression did not change, but her hands clenched into fists. "How long ago was this sent?" she asked. "Based on the signal strength and distance, I think about 6 hours ago." "Admiral, what are your orders?" Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. "Jake, I want you to keep monitoring that signal. Record everything. I need to talk to some people." The screen went dark. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders. "Lisa, keep listening. I want to know if they send any more messages." Pete, start scanning the Vega system. Use our deep space sensors. I want to know what's happening out there." For the next 4 hours, they listened and watched. The alien distress call kept repeating. Lisa managed to pull more information from their broadcasts. The Zilithians were a peaceful people who traded with other races. They had never started a war. The Corvins were an empire that conquered worlds and enslaved or killed everyone living there. Pete's sensors found the battle. Even from 12 light. Years away, they could see the energy signatures of a massive space fight. Hundreds of ships were firing weapons at each other around the Zilithian homeworld. "Captain," Pete reported, "I'm reading massive explosions in the Vega system." "Whatever's happening there, it's big." Admiral Sullivan called back 8 hours later. This time she was not alone. Jake could see other officers behind her, important people from Earth's government and military. "Captain Morrison, we've made a decision. Humanity is going to answer that distress call." Jake felt his heart skip. "Admiral, are you sure? We don't know anything about these aliens. We don't know how strong the enemy is." "Jake, we've been listening to radio signals from all over the galaxy for the past 6 hours. You know what we found? Nothing. Nobody else is answering their call for help. Every other race in the galaxy is ignoring them." Sullivan leaned forward. "But we're not like the others, Jake. We're humans. When someone calls for help, we answer. Even if they're strangers. Even if it's dangerous." Jake nodded slowly. He understood. This was what made humans different. They did not abandon people who needed help. "Admiral, what are your orders?" "Pack up your station, Jake. You're coming home. We're assembling the largest fleet humanity has ever built. And you're going to guide us to those aliens who need our help." As Jake began shutting down Sentinel Prime, he looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, aliens were dying while their neighbors did nothing. But not humans. Humans were coming to help. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you hurt innocent people while humans were watching. Luna Station had never seen anything like it. Ships were arriving from every corner of human space. Admiral Ben Rodriguez stood on the observation deck and watched the fleet grow larger every hour. Massive dreadnoughts floated next to smaller cruisers and destroyers. Fighter squadrons flew practice. Runs between the capital ships. Ben had been planning this operation for 3 days without sleep. His staff officers moved around him like busy ants, coordinating supplies, fuel, and ammunition for 800 ships. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled. Admiral Rodriguez, his aide, called out. The UHS Retribution just arrived from the Proxima shipyards. Ben turned to see the newest and most powerful ship in the human fleet. The Retribution was 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level the moon. Captain Amy Barnes commanded her. She was young for a capital ship captain, but she had proven herself in 3 different battles against pirates. "Get me Captain Barnes on the communicator," Ben ordered. Amy's face appeared on his screen. She had short red hair and green eyes that seemed to see everything. "Admiral Rodriguez, the Retribution is ready for action. My crew is excited to be part of this mission." "Good, Amy. You'll be flying as my flagship. We jump to the Vega system in 18 hours. Ben paused. "Are you ready to fight aliens?" Amy smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Sir, I've been ready to fight aliens my whole life. I just never thought I'd get the chance." In another part of Luna Station, Commander Luke Hayes was briefing the fleet's officers about their enemy. Luke worked for human intelligence. He had spent the last 3 days studying every piece of information they could gather about the Corvin Empire. "Ladies and gentlemen," Luke said to the room full of captains and commanders, "we are going up against an enemy that has been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. The Corvins have better shields than us. Their plasma weapons are more advanced than our lasers. Their ships are faster, and their fleet is twice as large as ours. A captain in the back row raised her hand. Commander Hayes, if they're so much better than us, how are we supposed to win? Luke smiled. Because they've never fought humans before. Every race they've conquered fought the same way. Line up your ships, trade shots until someone runs out of ammunition or loses too many vessels. It's like an old-fashioned naval battle, but in space. He brought up a display showing human battle tactics. We don't fight that way. We adapt. We improvise. We use dirty tricks. While they're expecting a polite space battle, we're going to give them a street fight. Colonel Steve Murphy commanded the Marines who had boarded enemy ships. Steve was a big man with scars on his face from the gang wars on Mars. He had volunteered for every dangerous mission the Marines had offered for 15 years. The aliens have never seen human ground combat, Steve told his officers. They've been conquering races that surrender when their spaceships get destroyed. They don't know what to do when angry humans with rifles come charging through their airlocks. Chief Engineer Maria Santos was working on something special in the station's weapons lab. Maria had designed most of the new human weapon systems. She was small and quiet, but she understood how to break things better than anyone else in the fleet. The problem with energy shields, Maria explained to her team, is that they're designed to stop energy weapons. Lasers, plasma bolts, particle beams. But they don't stop solid objects very well. She showed them her latest creation. It looked like a giant rifle, but it was mounted on a spaceship. This is a railgun. It uses magnetic fields to fire a solid metal slug, 10% of light speed. When it hits an enemy ship, it punches right through their shields, like they aren't even there. Her assistant, Lieutenant Dan Parker, looked worried. Maria, these things use a lot of power. We can only fire them a few times before we need to. Recharge. That's okay, Dan. We only need to hit them once. Captain Jake Morrison arrived at Luna Station with his crew from Sentinel Prime. He was assigned to Admiral Sullivan's command ship as an advisor. Jake knew more about the alien signals than anyone else. Admiral Kate Sullivan met him in her ready room. She looked tired. The weight of commanding humanity's first interstellar war was heavy on her shoulders. Jake, I need you to tell me honestly. Do you think we can win this? Jake thought about the question carefully. Admiral, I've been listening to those alien distress calls for days now. The Zilithians sound like good people. They're not asking us to conquer anyone or steal anything. They just want to live. That's not what I asked you. Admiral, I think the question isn't whether we can win. The question is whether we can live with ourselves if we don't try. Jake looked out the window at the fleet. Those aliens called for help, and we're the only ones who answered. That says something about who we are. Sullivan nodded. You're right. Win or lose, we have to try. The final briefing took place in Luna Station's main auditorium. Every ship captain and senior officer was there, either in person or by video link. Admiral Sullivan stood at the podium and looked out at the faces of the people who would lead humanity into its first major space war. Tomorrow, we jump to the Vega system, she began. We don't know exactly what we'll find there, but we know that innocent people are dying while we talk. The Corvan Empire thinks they can exterminate an entire race while the galaxy watches and does nothing. She paused and let that sink in. They're wrong. We're going to show them that humans don't abandon people who call for help. We're going to show them that there are still races in this galaxy who will fight for what's right, even when the odds are against us. The auditorium was completely silent. Some of you might not come home from this mission. I won't lie to you about that. We're facing an enemy that has been winning wars since before humans invented agriculture. But I'll tell you what they don't have. They don't have our determination. They don't have our willingness to sacrifice for strangers. And they don't have our refusal to give up when things look impossible. Admiral Sullivan's voice grew stronger. In 18 hours, we jump to hyperspace. When we arrive at the Vega system, we're going to save those aliens. And we're going to send a message to every empire in the galaxy. If you want to slaughter innocent people, you'll have to go through humanity first. The applause was deafening. 800 ship captains and 50,000 crew members cheered, until their voices were hoarse. They were scared, but they were ready. 12 hours later, the last supplies were loaded, and the final repairs were completed. The fleet formed up in a massive formation, stretching across 1,000,000 kilometers of space. At the center, the UHS Retribution led the way with Admiral Rodriguez and Captain Barnes on the bridge. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, the communications officer announced. Admiral Rodriguez looked around his bridge one last time. These might be the last few moments of peace they would have for a long time. "Take us to hyperspace," he ordered. "It's time to answer that distress call." 800 human warships disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vega system. What they saw made even the most experienced officers sick to their stomachs. Commander Ryan Davis piloted the reconnaissance ship UHS Hawk ahead of the main fleet. His job was to scout the system and report back what he found. Through his ship's cameras, he could see the Zilithian homeworld burning. "Fleet Command, this is Hawk 1, Ryan reported. His voice was shaking with anger. "I'm seeing massive orbital bombardment in progress. The Corvin fleet has the planet surrounded. They're firing on cities, civilian areas. I can see refugee ships trying to escape, but the enemy fighters are hunting them down." Admiral Kate Sullivan listened to the report from the bridge of her command ship. She had seen war before, but this was different. This was not a battle between armies. This was extermination. "How many Corvin ships, Commander Davis?" "I count over 1,500 vessels." "Admiral." "Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and hundreds of smaller attack craft. They have us outnumbered 2-1. Sullivan closed her eyes for a moment. The numbers were worse than their worst estimates. But there was no turning back now. "Ryan, Ken, you make contact with any surviving Zilithian forces?" "I'm trying, Admiral. Most of their communications are jammed, but I'm picking up scattered transmissions from a defense station on the far side of the planet." Captain Nicole Foster commanded the human fighter squadrons. She was flying her interceptor with a wing of 30 other pilots toward the edge of the battle zone. Nicole had been a test pilot before the war started. She knew how to fly anything with engines and weapons. "Fighter command to all pilots," Nicole said over the radio. "We're going to hit their patrol groups first. Make them think we're just raiders. Don't let them see the main fleet until it's too late." Her wingman, Lieutenant Tony Martinez, was nervous. "Captain Foster, those alien fighters look pretty advanced. Are you sure our ships can handle them?" "Tony, I've been flying combat missions since I was 18. I've never met an alien pilot yet." Nicole checked her weapons systems. "Today we find out how good they really are." The first contact happened when a Corvin patrol squadron detected the human scouts. 6 alien ships moved to intercept Ryan's reconnaissance vessel. The Corvin ships were sleek and silver, with curved wings and glowing engines. They looked fast and deadly. High Admiral Vex Rowan commanded the Corvin fleet from his massive flagship. He was in the middle of directing the bombardment when his tactical officer reported the new contacts. "Sir, we have unknown vessels entering the system. They appear to be warships, but the configuration is not familiar." Vex Rowan was not concerned. In 1,000 years of conquest, the Corvin Empire had faced dozens of different races. They all fought the same way, and they all lost. Eventually, how many ships? "Difficult to determine, sir. Perhaps 100 vessels, much smaller than our fleet. Another minor race trying to play hero, Vex Ruin said with amusement. Continue the bombardment. Send 2 squadrons to deal with these newcomers. We'll add their homeworld to our list of conquests after we finish here. The first space battle between humans and aliens began when Nicole Foster's fighters engaged the Corvin patrol. The alien pilots expected a standard engagement. Fighter craft would approach each other, exchange missile volleys, then break off. To regroup. That was not how humans fought. Nicole led her squadron in a high-speed dive straight at the Corvin formation. Instead of slowing down to exchange shots, the human fighters accelerated to ramming speed. At the last second, they scattered in all directions, firing their guns as they passed through the enemy formation. 2 Corvin fighters exploded immediately. The other 4 were so surprised by the tactic that they forgot to return fire. By the time they regrouped, the human fighters were already coming around for another attack run. What are these creatures doing? The lead Corvin pilot transmitted to his flagship. They fight like madmen. Lieutenant Tony Martinez scored the 3rd kill when he rammed his damaged fighter into a Corvin ship that was pursuing one of his squadron. Mates, both ships exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Tony. Nicole screamed over the radio, but it was too late. Her friend was gone. The surviving human fighters regrouped and continued the attack. They were outnumbered, but their unpredictable tactics were confusing the alien pilots. Corvin fighters were designed for careful, methodical combat. They could not adapt to the chaotic human fighting style. Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Davis had managed to make contact with the Zilithian Defense Forces. An alien voice came through his communication system. It sounded desperate and exhausted. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Valteran of the Zilithian Republic. Please identify yourselves. Are you here to help us? Admiral Valteran, this is Commander Davis of the Human Space Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to get you out of this. There was a long pause. Human? We have never heard of your species. How many ships do you have? 800. Vessels and 50,000 crew members, Admiral. We're here to stop the Corvins. Valteran's voice became emotional. You came all this way to help strangers? Why would you risk your lives for people you have never met? Ryan thought about that question. Because it's the right thing to do, sir. Admiral Sullivan was coordinating the main fleet's approach when Captain Amy Barnes contacted her from the flagship UHS Retribution. Admiral, we are receiving tactical data from the reconnaissance ships. The Corvin fleet is spread out around the planet in a standard siege formation. They're not expecting a real fight. What do you recommend, Amy? Hit them hard and fast before they can reorganize. Use our rail. Guns to punch through their shield ships, then send in the Marines to capture their command vessels. Sullivan nodded. Make it happen. Signal all ships. Attack Formation Alpha. Target their heavy units first. The main human fleet emerged from behind a small moon and accelerated toward the Corvin formation. The alien ships detected them immediately and began to turn to face the new threat. High Admiral Vex Ruin was surprised by the size of the human fleet, but not worried. He had faced larger enemies before. All ships, battle formation. Charge weapons and prepare to engage. Show these primitives the power of the Corvin Empire. The first volley of the battle came from the human rail guns. Maria Santos had equipped 50 ships with their new kinetic weapons. They fired simultaneously, sending solid metal slugs racing toward the Corvin fleet at incredible speed. The alien shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against the physical projectiles. 12 Corvin ships were destroyed in the first salvo. Huge holes were punched through their hulls, and secondary explosions tore them apart. What just happened? Vex Ruin demanded. How did they penetrate our shields? His tactical officer was staring at his instruments in confusion. "Sir, they're not using energy weapons. They're firing solid projectiles. Our shields can't stop them." For the first time in his long military career, High Admiral Vex Ruin felt a chill of fear. These humans were not fighting like any enemy he had faced before Captain Amy Barnes brought the UHS Retribution into the heart of the Corvin Formation, her guns blazing. The massive human dreadnought absorbed enemy fire while dealing out devastating damage in return. "All batteries, concentrate fire on their command ship," Amy ordered. "Let's cut the head off this snake." The space battle raged for hours. Human ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking hard and then retreating before the aliens could respond effectively. The Corvins tried to use their superior numbers, but the humans refused to fight a conventional battle as night fell on the Zilithian. Homeworld, the tide of battle was turning. The human fleet had lost 30 ships, but they had destroyed over 100 Corvin vessels. More importantly, they had broken the siege of the planet. Admiral Velteron's voice came over the communications. "System. Human fleet. This is unbelievable. In 6 hours, you have accomplished what our entire military could not do in 3 months." "Who are you people?" Admiral Sullivan answered personally. "We're humans, Admiral, and we don't like bullies." The battle was far from over, but the Corvin Empire had learned an important lesson. They were no longer fighting helpless victims. They were fighting humanity. High Admiral Vex Ruin was furious. In the first day of fighting, his fleet had lost over 200 ships, while the humans had lost less than 50. These primitive aliens were making him look like a fool in front of the entire Corvin Empire. "Bring the fleet into tight formation," he ordered his officers. "No more of this scattered fighting. We'll crush them with overwhelming firepower." His tactical advisor looked nervous. "Sir, our standard battle tactics don't seem to work against these. Humans, perhaps we should retreat and request reinforcements." Vex Ruin's eyes burned with rage. "Retreat? I have commanded this fleet for 30 years. I have conquered 47 worlds. I will not be defeated by some unknown species with primitive technology." The second day of battle began when the Corvin fleet formed into a massive wall of ships. Over 1,000 vessels arranged themselves in perfect lines, their weapons pointed at the human fleet. It was an impressive sight that had terrified enemies for centuries. Captain Gary Mitchell commanded the human destroyer UHS Lightning. He was known throughout the fleet for his crazy ideas and his ability to make them work. When he saw the Corvin formation, he smiled. "Communications, get me Admiral Rodriguez," Gary said to his crew. "Admiral, this is Captain Mitchell. I have an idea about how to break up that pretty formation the aliens just made." Admiral Ben Rodriguez was on the bridge of the UHS Retribution, coordinating the fleet's movements. "What do you have in mind, Gary?" "Sir, they're lined up like targets at a shooting gallery. What if we hit them from above and below at the same time? Their formation assumes we'll attack from the front." Rodriguez considered the plan. It was risky, but the humans were already outnumbered. They needed to take chances. "Do it, Gary. Take half the destroyers and come at them from below. I'll bring the heavy ships in from above." The human fleet split into 2 groups. Gary led. 30 destroyers in a wide loop under the Corvin formation, while Admiral Rodriguez brought the main fleet over the top. The aliens detected the movement, but assumed it was a simple flanking maneuver. They were wrong. Commander Helen Brooks was aboard the assault transport UHS Warrior with a full company of Marines. Helen had been a police officer on Earth before joining the space fleet. She understood how to fight in tight spaces and how to use surprise as a weapon. "Listen up, Marines," she announced over the ship's intercom. "Our job is to capture that big Corvin command ship. Intel says it has over 3,000 aliens on board. We're taking it with 80 Marines. Sergeant Bill Cooper, a veteran of the Mars conflicts, raised his hand. Ma'am, how exactly are we supposed to capture a ship that size? Helen smiled. The same way we've been winning this whole war, Sergeant. We do something they don't expect. Win? The human fleet attacked from 2 directions at once. The Corvin formation began to crumble. Ships designed to fight in careful lines found themselves taking fire from above and below simultaneously. Their neat formation became a confused mess as captains tried to turn their vessels to face multiple threats. Gary, Mitchell's destroyers, came up from beneath the alien fleet like sharks attacking from the deep. His ships were fast and heavily armed. They punched through the Corvin lines and began targeting the larger vessels. Lightning to all ships, Gary announced. Pick your targets and hit them hard. Don't let them regroup. The UHS Storm, commanded by Captain Linda Walsh, rammed directly into a Corvin cruiser. Both ships were damaged, but Linda's crew was ready for close combat. They fired grappling hooks and began boarding the alien vessel. This is Captain Walsh to Marine Detachment. The ship is yours. Take it. Above the main battle, Admiral Rodriguez brought the heavy human ships down on the Corvin. Rear guard. The massive dreadnoughts and battlecruisers used their rail guns to devastating effect. Corvin ships exploded like fireworks as the kinetic weapons tore through their hulls. Captain Amy Barnes pushed the UHS Retribution deep into the enemy formation. Her ship was taking heavy fire, but the human armor was holding. All batteries concentrate on their flagship. Let's give their admiral something to think about. The Retribution's weapons lit up the space around the Corvin command ship. Explosions bloomed across the alien vessel's shields as human railguns and missile launchers poured fire into it. Admiral Vex Ruin felt his ship shaking under the human assault. Report. How much damage are we taking? Sir, forward shields are down to 30%. We have hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. The humans are concentrating all their fire on us. Vex Ruin realized that the humans were not just trying to win the battle. They were trying to capture or kill him personally. It was a level of focused aggression that no civilized race had ever shown him. Launch all fighters. Protect the flagship at all costs. But the human Marines were already on their way. Commander Helen Brooks led her boarding party through space in small assault pods. The pods were too small for the Corvin sensors to track effectively. 30 seconds to contact, Helen announced to her Marines. Remember, we're not here to fight. Fair. We're here to win. The assault pods slammed into the side of the Corvin flagship and cut through the hull with plasma torches. 80 human Marines poured through the holes and into the alien ship. The Corvins had never faced human ground combat before. Their ship's security forces were trained to repel other Corvins who fought with honor and followed rules. Humans did not follow rules. Sergeant Bill Cooper led his squad through the ship's corridors using grenades and automatic weapons. The Corvin defenders tried to set up defensive positions, but the humans moved too fast and hit too hard. Don't give them time to think, Bill shouted to his men. Keep moving, keep shooting. Meanwhile, Colonel Steve Murphy had launched his own boarding action against a Corvin orbital platform. Steve's Marines captured the massive weapons station and turned its guns against the Corvin fleet. Murphy to Fleet Command, Steve reported. Platform 7 is under human control. Requesting target assignments. Admiral Rodriguez could hardly believe what he was hearing. Steve, you took an entire orbital platform with one company of Marines? Yes, sir. Turns out these aliens don't know how to fight in hallways. The tide of battle was turning decisively in humanity's favor. The Corvin fleet was losing ships faster than they could count. Their perfect formation had become a scattered mess of burning, Wreckage. Commander Helen Brooks reached the bridge of the Corvin flagship after 30 minutes of brutal fighting. Her Marines had cut through 6 decks of alien defenders. When the bridge doors opened, she found herself face to face with High Admiral Vex Ruin. The alien was tall and reptilian, with scales that changed color when he was angry. Right now, they were bright red. "I am High Admiral Vex Ruin of the Corvin Empire," he announced in perfect English. "I demand to be treated according to the galactic conventions of war." Helen looked around the bridge. Dead Zilithian civilians were visible on the viewing screens as the planet burned below. She thought about the 3 billion aliens who had already died. "I'm Commander Helen Brooks of the Human Space Marines," she replied, "and I don't know anything about galactic conventions." She raised her rifle. "But I know what you did to those innocent people down there." Vex Ruin's scales turned pale with fear. For the first time in his life, he was facing an enemy who cared more about justice than honor. "Wait," he said desperately. "I can offer you terms. Wealth, territory, anything you want." Helen's finger tightened on the trigger. "What I want is for you to surrender your entire fleet." Right now, the High Admiral looked around his bridge. His officers were dead or wounded. His ship was captured. His fleet was being destroyed by an enemy he had never imagined could exist. "I surrender," he whispered. Helen spoke into her radio. "Fleet Command, this is Brooks. The Corvin flagship is secured. Their admiral wants to discuss terms." Across the battlefield, the remaining Corvin ships began to surrender rather than face the same fate as their flagship. The humans had achieved the impossible. They had defeated a superior enemy through sheer determination and unconventional tactics. But the cost had been high. The human fleet had lost over 100 ships and thousands of crew members. The victory was complete, but it was written in blood. Admiral Kate Sullivan surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The Corvin Empire's greatest fleet was destroyed or captured. The siege of the Zilithian homeworld was broken. But she knew this was just the beginning. Word of humanity's victory would spread across the galaxy. Other races would learn that there was a new power among the stars. A power that answered distress calls and fought for justice rather than conquest. The galaxy was about to change forever. The space around the Zilithian homeworld was filled with wreckage from the great battle. Thousands of pieces of destroyed ships floated like metal snow against the stars. But among the debris, something terrible was still moving. High Admiral Vex Ruin had one last weapon. Even though his fleet was defeated and he was a prisoner on his own ship, he had kept one secret from the humans. Deep in the heart of his flagship was a planet-killer weapon. One shot could turn the Zilithian homeworld into a ball of molten rock. "You think you have won," Vex Ruin said to Commander Helen Brooks as she guarded him on his own bridge. "But I can still destroy this entire world. 20 million Zilithians will die, and there is nothing you can do to stop it." Helen's eyes went cold. "What are you talking about?" "My ship carries a quantum torpedo. It will crack this planet's core like an egg. I would rather see everyone die than let primitives like you claim victory over the Corvin Empire." Through the bridge windows, they could see the blue and green world below. Millions of Zilithian families were celebrating their rescue, not knowing that death was still hanging over them. Captain Amy Barnes was on the bridge of the UHS Retribution when she received Helen's urgent message. The quantum torpedo was already being prepared for launch. It would fire automatically in 10 minutes, unless someone with Vex Ruin's genetic signature stopped it. "Amy to Admiral Rodriguez," she called over the communication system. "We have a problem. The Corvin flagship has a planet-killer weapon, and it's about to fire." Admiral Ben Rodriguez felt his blood turn to ice. After everything they had done, after all the lives lost, The Corvins were going to murder 20 million innocent people out of spite. How long do we have? 8 minutes, sir. The only way to stop it is if Vex Rune calls it off personally, or if we destroy the ship. Rodriguez looked out at the Corvin flagship. It was huge and heavily armored. Even if they concentrated all the remaining firepower on it, they might not be able to destroy it in time. And Helen Brooks was still on board with her Marines. Amy, there has to be another way. Captain Amy Barnes stared at the enemy ship for a long moment. Then she made a decision that would be remembered for 1,000 years. Admiral, I'm going to ram the Retribution into their weapon bay. It's the only way to stop that torpedo. Amy, no. Find another solution. Sir, this is the solution. My ship can punch through their armor and destroy the weapon before it fires. But we won't survive the impact. Rodriguez felt tears in his eyes. Amy Barnes was 28 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. Amy, I'm ordering you to find another way. Admiral, with respect, I'm not going to let 20 million people die because I was afraid. Helen, can you and your Marines get off that ship? Commander Helen Brooks heard the conversation over her radio. She looked around the Corvin bridge. Her Marines were scattered throughout the ship, fighting off counterattacks from alien security forces. Negative, Amy. We're pinned down in multiple locations. We can't reach the escape pods in time. Amy Barnes looked around her bridge one last time. Her crew was staring at her, waiting for orders. They all knew what she was planning to do. Crew of the UHS Retribution, she announced over the ship's intercom. We have one chance to save 20 million innocent lives. It's going to cost us everything we have. Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods now. Not one person moved. Chief Engineer Maria Santos spoke for everyone when she said, Captain. We're with you, Amy nodded. Her crew was the best in the human fleet. All hands prepare for ramming speed. Engineering, give me everything the engines have. The UHS Retribution turned toward the Corvin flagship and began to accelerate. The massive human dreadnought built up speed slowly at first, then faster and faster. Soon it was moving at 10% of light speed, aimed directly at the alien. Weapon Bay High Admiral Vex Rune saw the human ship approaching and realized what they were doing. Impossible. They're going to sacrifice their most powerful ship to save strangers. Commander Helen Brooks grabbed the alien admiral by his scaled throat. That's what humans do. We protect people who can't protect themselves. The quantum torpedo launcher was almost ready to fire. 3 minutes remaining. The Retribution was still 2 minutes away from impact. Admiral Rodriguez watched helplessly as Amy Barnes flew toward certain death. All ships concentrate fire. On the Corvin flagship, we have to help her. Every remaining human ship opened fire on the enemy vessel. Railguns, missiles, and laser cannons lit up space as they tried to weaken the alien ship's armor. But it was not enough. The flagship's defenses were too strong. Captain Amy Barnes felt her ship shaking as the engines pushed beyond their safety limits. Pieces of the hull were beginning to tear away from the stress, but the Retribution kept accelerating. Amy, Admiral Rodriguez called over the radio. You don't have to do this. We can evacuate the planet. Sir, there are 20 million people down there. Families with children. Old people who can't travel. We can't evacuate them all in time. Amy's voice was calm and steady. This is the right thing to do. 1 minute to torpedo launch. 30 seconds to impact. The U.S. Retribution slammed into the side of the Corvin flagship like a hammer hitting glass. The human ship's reinforced bow punched through 6 decks of alien armor and exploded deep inside the enemy vessel. Both ships disappeared in a ball of white fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. When the explosion faded, there was nothing left but expanding gases and metal fragments. The quantum torpedo was destroyed. The planet was saved. But Amy Barnes and her crew of 3,000 people were gone. The silence that followed lasted for almost a minute. Then Admiral Rodriguez's voice came over the fleet communication system. The UHS Retribution and all hands are lost. Captain Amy Barnes died, saving 20 million innocent lives. We will remember her sacrifice forever. On the surface of the Silithian homeworld, crowds of alien civilians looked up at the sky where the explosion had occurred. They did not fully understand what had happened, but they knew that the humans had saved them again. Admiral Vel Terran's voice came over the human fleet's radio. Admiral Rodriguez, we saw what your captain did. There are no words in our language for such selflessness. How can we ever repay this debt? You don't need to repay anything, Admiral. Amy did what any human would do in her place. The cleanup after the battle took 3 days. The surviving Corvin ships were escorted to prison camps on the edge of the system. High Admiral Vex Ruin was taken to Earth to stand trial for his war crimes. The Corvin Empire's most powerful fleet was finished, but more importantly, word of the battle was spreading across the galaxy at light speed. Other alien races were learning about humanity for the first time. They heard about a species that traveled 12 light years to answer a distress call from strangers. They heard about warriors who fought impossible odds to protect innocent people. They heard about a captain who sacrificed her ship and crew to save 20 million aliens she had never met. The Galactic Council, which had ignored the Silithian pleas for help, held an emergency session. Ambassador Kyle Tor of the Andromedan Federation stood before the assembly. Fellow delegates, we have a new situation. A previously unknown species called humans has appeared in our galaxy. In 3 days, they accomplished what our combined fleets refused to attempt. They answered a distress call and stopped a genocide. The council chamber was filled with worried voices. Many of the alien delegates were asking the same question. What did humanity want in return for their help? The answer came when Admiral Kate Sullivan addressed the Galactic Council by long-range transmission. Distinguished delegates, humanity does not seek territory, tribute, or political control. We have one simple message for all the races of this galaxy. When innocent people call for help, we will answer. When tyrants threaten the defenseless, we will stop them. When genocidal empires try to exterminate entire civilizations, they will have to go through us first. Sullivan paused to let that sink in. We are establishing permanent patrol fleets throughout this region of space. Any race that needs protection can call on humanity. Any empire that chooses conquest over peace will find us waiting. The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council in chaos. Some delegates were terrified of these aggressive newcomers. Others were hopeful that someone would finally stand up to the various empires and warlords that plagued the galaxy. On the Silithian homeworld, they were building a monument to Captain Amy Barnes and the crew of the UHS Retribution. Silithian children were learning human names in their schools. The planet's government had declared an eternal alliance with humanity. Admiral Vel Terran stood in the memorial plaza and looked up at the stars. Never again, he said quietly. Never again will we face extinction alone. 6 months later, monitoring stations across the galaxy detected the movement of human patrol fleets. Fast ships with powerful weapons were taking up positions along the major trade routes. The message was clear. Humanity was watching. The first test came when the Draconian Empire attacked the peaceful Centauri colonies. The Draconians had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics as the Corvins. They expected another easy victory. Instead, they found a human fleet waiting for them. The Battle of Centauri lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Draconian invasion force was destroyed and their emperor